So, very welcome to the 7th edition of Caring a School, the October edition, and where we invited 2 panelists. This is a virtual roundtable where we will invite you to get to know panelists, but also ask your questions, and you are being involved in answer question sessions, as well as some breakout sessions where we can identify whether we find also synergies among each other or exchange simply ideas that are related to caring in a very broad sense. So when we speak about caring here, we have impact projects that take care or care about nature, about life on planet Earth. And so we have had panelists from different areas using different creative or other tools to express their care or to do projects that directly relate to regenerative cultures or regenerative strategies, from regeneration of forests to building communities of exchange and providing platforms of interaction. So you see, there's a lot to care and different methods to care. We have 2 panelists that basically represent the power of communication. Rebecca Ware Robinson on LinkedIn is saying about herself, I translate research and theory to action. I teach activists how to seize power and wield it effectively. So the idea is not that she does her work for herself, but helping activists, engaged people to reach their goals. And she does that through consulting, through coaching, and to speaking. And you can find very interesting resources on her website, RebeccaWareRobinson.com. I saw that she was involved in major policy making and developing action plans on different levels. So for the safety action plan for the US regarding water safety, which is a plan that covers basically the period from today, from 2023 to 2032, and an additional safety plan, a water safety plan that she supported the implementation also very recently during the last 4 to 5 years for water safety in the Chicago area. Rebecca, as so many of us, are using on the LinkedIn platform also the tool of posts to raise awareness or to engage the communication and discussion with the public. And this is now a very recent post from 1 week ago. It has to do with understanding how society reacts to the current challenges and how marketing can be possibly a tool to help drive change. And I think the communication pattern that in the very last statement, to stop making it big, make it personal, is one strategy of communication and marketing that possibly could have a very large impact in how individuals react to the current threats. I would like to present our second panelist of today, Merlin Bola. And his statement is maybe a little bit similar. What if we get it right? Digital mission hubs for regenerative founders, leaders, and consultants. Idealist introvert on a mission to be louder. We can see here some of the articles published by Growing into Flow, discussing relevant topics of our times, discussing the difficulties also related to communication, the difficulties of language, of the words that have changed meaning in different contexts or that are being used in different contexts in very different ways. And he offers help for people to understand whether regenerative thinking is something for them on their business or other professional career trajectory. Merlin says he had career break, but this seemed to be a big learning break in which Merlin was developing the strategy for this Grow into Flow platform and project. And when you read this description, it is a lot about finding excitement about being part of a paradigm shift, to engage into a paradigm shift based on his interest in ecology of psychology and curiosity. This was sparked by a personal crisis by his field of study. I looked what this field of study was, and of course that is interesting to discuss, that actually it was management of natural resources, which one would think maybe it's something inspiring or positive. And so I was curious to hear more about that as well. Grow into Flow is to support also change makers, such that the communication is optimized to make financial flow into projects of impact. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation to be panelists on this session. And with this, I would like to invite both of you to present yourselves in your own words, and maybe a few of the items that I mentioned are kicking off some discussion. Rebecca.
Thank you so much for including me for today, and I'm excited to be doing this. I think that Merlin and I have a lot of overlap. I hope I got the pronunciation right. For me, artists are the ultimate activists, because it is translating radical ideas into a different format and forcing people to look at the world in a different way. And so it jars us. Art, it shoves you out of your comfort zone. And I think that I know what I'm talking about. I think also what Merlin is talking about with the communication, and especially the marketing, is that idea that how do we then jar people out of their comfort zone and see things in a different way? How do we bring them along to a new way of thinking? So if I were to accomplish one thing today and on LinkedIn, it's to get people to start thinking that marketing is not business. I mean, marketing has actually been social psychology really successfully marketed by business as something different. But marketing is simply social psychology. It is understanding people. It is understanding how we engage their emotions to change their attitudes and behaviors. But business dressed it up as marketing and then took it a little bit further, because it has a specific goal and what do you want people to do? Whereas the social psychology, I tend to think of it as more of a general, how do people act? Whereas once it's translated into business, it's like, we have a specific goal. What do we want to accomplish? And the analogy I always use is that for social marketing, which is blending social psychology and marketing, is the straight corporate marketing is I wanted you to choose Coke or Pepsi. But the social marketing, which is integrating social psychology, that understanding of the deep social issues, that going after things like climate change or the 15 years I spent in drowning prevention, it's how do I engage your emotions? How do I harness the power of marketing and amplify it? How do I harness that power and then use it to change attitudes and behaviors for the public good? And one of the things I'm really fascinated about Merlin's approach is that he does dig down and he focuses on, we have to look at the money. We have to look at who's benefiting. We have to take that very pragmatic understanding of how the world really works and integrate that into our approach. So I'm going to hand that over at that point.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Yeah, Merlin, I'm curious what you would like to say.
Thank you for the invitation. It actually was, or the introduction, that was pretty much on point, like already the narrative arc of how I arrived here a little bit. Right now, I'm sharing the mission with Rebecca, so really leverage the very center, like our point of consciousness, where everything flows through and then translates into action. How can we get this right? Because everything else seems to flow on from there. We are somewhat obsessed with natural law, figuring out what determines nature, what makes physics go. And I'm left with the feeling that we have overlooked one specific, very central law that's a little bit more hidden. And it seems to be that everything first starts as an idea, as an imagination, as something intangible, something metaphysical. And we can attribute this to the human realm, of course. when I want to craft a hammer, I first need to think the hammer. But Plato, for example, was of the opinion that this transcends the human realm, that everything first is there as an image, as an idea, that the universe thinks in some way, and then translates the idea into matter. And then things go wrong. Like then there's sickness and disease and hurt. But the perfect ideal might be behind all of the things that we marvel at. Like they seem to be somewhat well designed. So I'm thinking, I'm coming from this not marketing standpoint at all at first. First ecology, then psychology, a little bit obsessed with both. And now I'm making this lateral entry into marketing, and really coming from a disregard of the rules of the system so far, like how was marketing done before, and try to bring in, first try to operate myself from a position of what is the depth of all of this? Like, what is the future trajectory of our species that we want to realize? And what's needed, really? What's like, if words have a lot of meaning, how to put it back in? And how to make this very impactful realm of marketing just roll. So yeah, I'm still in the figuring out phase to some degree. I'm deeply committed to the whole cause. I'm getting the first results and great feedback, and I guess I'll stay in the state of mind of figuring it out, because this is we're confronted with quite wicked problems that seek solutions, and all of this is messy, and it's not done by one element. But yeah, I'm focusing on communication, psychology, storytelling for now, and then see what other parts of the system can be elevated by this, and by many lucid network nodes.
Thank you very much. This is, I think, great to see. So you both work with marketing strategies. You debunk maybe how the term marketing has been maybe misused, or, but you have now, different experience levels, and I think this event allows us to bring people with so much diverse backgrounds together and have impact-driven conversation. In the preparation of this event, I spoke with Merlin, or we chatted about a different way of how we work, and we talked about the topic of collaboration or extreme collaboration. And I was curious to hear your thought about maybe new ways of collaborating that would be maybe adapted to the current challenges.
Mm-hmm. I actually jotted down quite some notes right after we had our chat, and I see how I can wrap this up in a short, punchy way. So I was thinking, like, also prompted by my field of interest, by my field of study, by just how do we arrive here? Essentially trying to map the past and make sense of how we actually then got to be human beings sitting in front of screens, talking to each other, wired into a global network of exchange and collaboration, possible collaboration, not always. And I recently ran into a framework that was new to me, called multi-level selection. And it differentiates itself, or finds the middle between what Charles Dawkins wrote, The Selfish Gene, the evolutionary processes on the back of competition, and then the kin selection on the other side, that essentially poses that all of this rests on collaborative efforts. And multi-level selection poses the idea that it's both, it's yes and that there is a certain competitive tension between groups and organisms, but that within groups, they select positively for collaboration. And my notes, I titled The Dark Seed That Makes Collaboration Seek the Light, because I like to start there, the dark part, the thing that makes us monkeys, and then see how we can kind of grow towards a different trajectory. And I saw in my bachelor's thesis that even plants in mixed cropping systems, they are likely to go into collaboration, but as soon as conditions shift, they start to compete. And they start to compete both when resources are incredibly scarce, like then everyone to their own. And they also stop to collaborate when there's such an abundance of resources that no one needs to be helped. So they collaborate in the middle where there's a little bit of tension. And this obviously makes me think, because there seems to be both. There seems to be a competitive itch that I think needs to be soothed, that like there are, for example, high performers, and we need them. We want their work, and they often bring a level of competitiveness with them. And my idea is that we could turn this, if we get it right, turn this into play instead of destructive competition. And then adding to a book, Good to Great, that said that the highest performing teams that really produced a lot of insights and results were at times deeply competitive and got into intense arguments, and then reunited into collaboration again. And I think there's something there. I think there's something integrated there, something that can acknowledge both parts, that doesn't get stuck up in, oh, we have to collaborate, and then kind of form an ideology of harmony that then invites our shadow to seep in, like suppressed parts of our psyche to seep in again, but instead have all of the things that make us dark on some way, have them so close to the surface where we can see them and can use them as a tool, and then rather not use them, but have them so close to the surface that we essentially have teeth but don't bite. And my list goes on, but I would stop here for now, because it's a topic of interest, and I could go on.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Rebecca, I don't know if you would like to share some thoughts about collaboration as well.
I would, and I would just like to add on, another variable to that, and that is the money and financial scarcity and the view of financial scarcity. So I'm going to talk specifically about what I saw in the drowning prevention field, because it is a fascinating experiment, actually. It was a great experiment for me to be involved with, but I think the lessons I learned can be applied to so many different issues. You know, I know a bunch of different issues, and I think climate change is one of them that it is applied to, which is this idea of scarcity and the competition. So one of the things that I think is a value of a panel like this, and also the age, it's not just our experience different, it's our age difference. So we are looking at the world through different lens of experience. So I did come of age of the greed is good Wall Street MBA era, you know, and so I saw that mentality from a very, that influences you. And so within the drowning prevention field, so it is the third leading cause of unintentional injury death worldwide, we think, but we're actually pretty sure it's number one. It's just that 59% of World Health Organizations don't even collect drowning on it. So it is a massive, massive problem. It cannot be solved by any cool app, by any cool products, or by a pharmaceutical. It's just simple behavior change, and very simple, very low cost behavior change to be developed. So it's not something that the big money is attracted to. And so the largest foundation, it has 25 million. And that is one foundation. The rest of it, you're probably operating on a budget of less than $1 million, and most of them are under 50,000. And there's not that many people. We have a global conference, 400 people show up. We all know each other. So again, it's this, but there's been this idea that you see across fields. First of all, we have this great idea, everybody should understand it. There's not the recognition that you have to market, you have to sell the importance. If you are in a field, climate change right now, it is an existential threat. There is no doubt about that. And yet we sit there assuming that we no longer have to convince anybody of what that means to them personally. And by doing that, you stop collaborating outside. So within the drowning prevention field, over the 15 years, you started with seeing this hunkering down and protecting the small minuscule pie of resources, financial and manpower resources that's allocated to preventing drowning globally. And everybody is focused on saving that $100. That's it. We got $100 and we all got to fight over it. Instead of going, we have one of the massive global epidemics. We need to build the pie. We need to expand the pie. We don't need $100. We need $100 million on this. And so all the effort goes into this hunkering down, protective. It's the self-protective. We're under attack. We don't know how quite to turn our idea out. And so that's one way that collaboration gets killed, is by this threat. You know, Merlin talked a little bit about that. It's that piece in the middle where people are like, I can't share what I'm doing because somebody else might take it. And there's such a scarcity of resources. And then you get to the point, which I saw in the 15 years in drowning prevention, that there is now more and more collaboration. We're seeing it in more areas. The national plan that I was involved with, the Chicago plan that I was involved with, part of the strength of the national plan was we drew on the national plans of other countries. You know, so there's a lot more collaboration like that. There still is virtually no collaboration outside that field. For instance, one of the main fields that drowning prevention field should be talking about, and I've been banging my drum on this for a while, is climate change. It is a guarantee that as climate change accelerates, more people are going to drown because the storms are more violent, there's more water, it's circulating at more violent levels. And so this idea, but you have to break down those silos within people. And part of that silo is creativity. It's forcing people to look at something that they know really well. That is the hardest thing, is to take something you know really well and communicate it in a very simplistic term, not dumbing down, not being insulting to people, but saying, this is why, if you're working on climate change, you should be talking to drowning prevention. You should be talking to gender inequality. And I know this is all happening, but it's happening in a very organic level. Is it happening in a more intense, strategic, we know where we're going, we have to build excuse the military terms, but are we building an army that is moving forward? Or do we have a lot of guerrilla groups that are moving forward? And in some circumstances, the guerrilla groups are fine. And so that's a loose collaboration and people come together and it's a very fluid sort of collaboration. Or are we needing something bigger? And to that, I would say, who's our competition? Our competition is the fossil fuel industry. And more than that, like I look at it, I dig down, you've got the fossil fuel industry. Well, what's supporting it? It's the wealth inequality. So who's your opposition? And what strategy do you need? And who do you need to be collaborating with? I think if we're going to address climate change, we also need to address wealth inequality. I do not see any other way that we can really make a dent in this. So again, throwing into what Merlin was saying and adding in the idea that collaboration is forcing people to break down their silos. It's asking people to go out of their comfort zone of, I know I'm an expert in my field and it feels good. And I go to conferences and I talk to other people who are also experts and they respect me. And nobody likes to break out of that field and then go have to explain what you're doing to other people. But it's also this idea of this mentality of breaking out of the small silo of collaboration and basically saying, we need to take over a much bigger piece of the financial pie. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of different dynamics going with the collaboration that are hard to wrap your head around.
Thank you very much. I see the chat is quite active, and I would like to involve the audience and also asking questions related. We have some comment about fear and scarcity and how this is being used in society. George wrote something about that. Feel free to comment and just raise your hand and contribute to the discussion.
Hello, good evening to all. Yes, so the principles of the crisis, that is whatever each one has is on perception or is on knowledge, but in deep, the crises are imposing fear So everything that is crisis is imposing fear to all humans, but not all, because this is a pyramid scheme that we are living. So in the field is in the bottom, the ones are on the bottom, then they are the majority, they are being imposed to us. So all the crises that are being posed, we need to be very careful about the solutions or the remedies they are trying to say that that's the path that we should safeguard or we should push for it. So I have I had been in one side of the of the story, and this is our as humans gathering. We are living stories, and the story that is being told, we need to take care and look to ourselves. What is the evidence that we take our own experience as other teachers and the other enlightened beings pass this earth. So on the I'm still the knowledge that I have. I found some experience to myself and different kind of channels. I don't follow so much the mainstream. I'm trying to follow alternatives and whatever, but I try to look to my own experience. So, and that's what and I have no certains when when I started even to say that I'm certain of certain things. Sometimes there's no certains. We in a rush, as everything is always in changing. Changing is it's what is happening at each moment. So each one of us should look for his own truth, or his own point of view. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add in, there's two really important things about fear. Like fear is one of the most powerful emotions. We kind of say that love and anger are, but fear really gets top billing when it comes to communication and changing emotions. The one is it is used to control people. And Jorge just, talked about that, and we see how often fear is being used to control and to direct, because fear engages our emotions at a very primal level with the reptilian brain. But there was an interesting study out of Norway recently showing that fear was also the single greatest emotion that encouraged people to act on climate change. Merlin, I'd really appreciate your insight into this. There's the razor thin line of how do you manage the fear when you're communicating that doesn't go on the side of the reptilian brain panic, I'm acting inappropriately or not acting at all, and the other side of I'm terrified the world is ending, I want to do something about it. So first of all, just to acknowledge the importance of our understanding fear and the role of fear, and thank you, Jorge, for bringing that up, and my acknowledging that it goes both ways, and you need to understand how fear is used to manipulate us and how to spur us on. And Merlin, I'm wondering if you have any other comments about that with fear as a communication tool.
Yes, thank you. There's so much going on that I struggle to order it all. Many inspirations. So I'm actually coming in by now. I'm probably coming in as a little bit of a devil's advocate that connects to Jorge's first impulse. I hope I pronounced your name right. I'm coming in obsessed essentially with psychology. I'm not a trained psychologist, but I was watching the things from essentially an immersion into psychology and an observation of what happens, fueled by my own psychological crisis. And then I'm turning marketer, and then I'm watching this stuff from a marketing standpoint. And I couldn't help but see a whole lot of undisclosed marketing in the past years. There are so many marketing principles trying to nudge and herd and direct people into certain avenues that are just not disclosed. They are international institutions speaking, and then there are officials talking, and then there are politicians with certain agendas, and what's happening behind them, what's funding them is all not disclosed. A big question on my mind was in terms of the 3 attractor model that Daniel Schmachtenberger provides. If anyone is familiar, there's one attractor. An attractor is like a future state that could be realized by our species in terms, depending on how we behave collectively. The first attractor is chaos. Just everything fizzles out. Just everything deteriorates into chaos and into competition and into people opposing each other, and society collapses. The other attractor is established power reins it all in and opposes or imposes authoritarian control over everything. And the third attractor, so the first I would label chaos, the second one is order, and the third one I would label awakening, where we as a species awaken to our collaborative impulse, to our collaborative longing, essentially, that has been disrupted by many plays, by many elements of fear, by many elements of competition, like inviting people from the ground up to compete and to be in fear and to grow up with a feeling of scarcity. And to overcome this and essentially build, like resign established power to a degree, like that's the third attractor, the attractor of awakening would do this. And this would be the restructuring of like resigning of established power, resigning of this accumulated wealth to a degree that you got to, Rebecca. And what I recently arrived at is that those who have a little bit more influence on the trajectory, the collective trajectory, and a little bit more influence on what is even being reported in the media, what's permissioned discourse, what do we even talk about, and what's outside of the boundaries, that those who pursue order, that those who would love to assert their will on to a collective, that they probably perceive chaos equally as a threat to awakening, because awakening in their mind probably looks a lot like chaos. And again, I'm aware to what degree one can go too far, but I couldn't help but notice certain pointers, certain signals, that something along these lines is happening. And I wrote in the chat the element of never let a good crisis go to waste. Caring people would always respond to crisis and try to make it better. I'm not sure there aren't players that would actually try to use crisis for their benefit. And just with this foundational pattern, I saw a lot of marketing actually used for undisclosed marketing, used for the wrong purposes. And it's touchy to bring this up. It's charged. It's sometimes plastered on with derogatory labels. And I get why people object to this, because there are many people who go too far and then just turn incredibly paranoid and then attack everyone else for not getting it. But I think truth is somewhere in the middle, and I would love to find it, because I think that's where genuine collective collaboration toward a genuinely better future could emerge. And I'm not sure if we can get through this bottleneck without being better critical thinkers on this front.
Thank you very much,
like
Merlin. Yeah, thank you very much. I saw Alcides tuning in and out, probably has something to contribute to this discussion, as I know. Let's see.
I was thinking, if I understand that, collaboration should be understood as self-organization, or things like getting together to take power, because usually I see this term when we're talking about marketing and we're talking about collaboration. It seems like we will be in a certain way in this position of sort of passive position, like we are going to be activated, and there are going to be a certain space with some rules where we will collaborate, but we are not creating the rules or activating ourselves. Seems in a certain way, like it sounds to me like something that would be where we would do necessary some sort of vertical organization. And so how would this social marketing or this collaboration sort of start from bottom up without big structure acting on it, something like that. Okay, so this is more a question. Okay.
Thank you very much. I think I heard with Merlin's vocabulary that you chose was awakening, associated maybe to this era of more extreme collaboration, which would mean actually an active evolution into a state of collaboration. I would think, but I understand that the marketing can be a mean that is used as a passive tool, but to activate, right? Yeah, the awakening in itself. Also, I think what George mentioned. This I find. Thank you very much for this contribution. I think that's also quite interesting, and I think more people are aware that through a world so dominated by marketing, and as you say, hidden marketing, and in all different dimensions, there's what do I experience myself? What is the reality that I experience with the people around me? Do I see this hate? Do I see the interaction with people around me reflected in what I see? Maybe, through media, through narratives that are basically constructed narratives, and not the narrative that you feel. Of course, it's just some thoughts around that. You have your hand up, the People's Creative. If you could.
Hi there. My
Hi.
name is Yasmani Arboleda. I'm joining you all from New York City. I have the great honor of being the People's Artist for the City of New York, which means that I've been working at the Civic Engagement Commission and with city government over the past 3 years. And as I'm hearing the conversation around marketing, around communication, all of these elements, one of the things that I think is essential that we're naming but we're not speaking about directly to is the notion of trust. And I would love to invite everyone and for all of, if you have perspectives or thoughts, when I think about what's happened over since the Industrial Revolution and all of the evolutions of technology of the past 100 years, I think that there's been so much growth and such a quick growth that we haven't really been able to adapt. And one of the things that I think about is how do we crystallize information and how do we build trust and relationships that allow us to really believe in the context and the processes that we are moving through in any given community across the world, but really centering this idea of trust. So what can we trust? I think so much of it is, when I think about marketing and communication, I'm like, gosh, capitalism has hijacked all of this, and the destruction of the earth is well on its way, because literally capitalism is inviting everyone to make money and be financially productive in any context. And so my question is a little bit about, like, how do we move toward trust? How can trust be built? With what are the tools that are available to us to genuinely move towards trust and towards systems of trust that will have people feel like they're being taken care of and they have belonging, as opposed to the models that lead with fear and with limitation and scarcity.
You kind of bring out all of the other discussions that we've just had recently. And where I come out is it's kind of a pincher move. And one of the things that Merlin was talking about was this hidden marketing. I like to call it distraction marketing. It's actually, we see it as hidden because the average person does not recognize what is being done to them. They don't recognize how much their emotions are being manipulated. And so when we start calling that out, we are educated. And so I think this is a role that art has. And going back as well to the comments about, like, where does social psychology come, or social marketing come into this, is I see it as a pincher move. I see activism as a pincher move, and I see these movements as a pincher move. Part of it is the groundswell up of change. This is where we are going. This is what we want to accomplish. It's that visionary, and it is the inspiring. And to that, I see an enormous impact of art to inspire people as to what the future can be. And also a little bit of warning them as to what's going to happen if they can't. But the other side of that is breaking down the competition. And that's one thing that I think activists of all stripes are Our biggest blind side is assuming that because we're trying to do good, we will succeed. There is always competition to that. There's always competition of people who the system is working just fine. And no, they don't really care that 1 to 2 billion people are scheduled to die. Look, I'm in the United States. I'm just glad that most of my kids are almost out of school, so they're not going to die at school. You know, there's overwhelming public agreement that we need gun control laws, but is anything changing? No, because we're stuck on this idea. Too often we get stuck on this idea with climate change, with drowning, with you name it, that if we just show enough good, things will happen. It will not. And so I think the pincher move that you're talking about, that we've all been talking about, is first of all, we create the groundswell, we create the positive marketing plan, the strategy of what do we need to do and how do we communicate that? And that's part of it, is how do we agree on what we're going to tell people? Like reversing climate change is not simple. So how do we start coming down to those talking points one at a time for target audiences and start pushing them? But there is also, you have to break down the competition. You have to, in this case, you have to destroy the competition. We have got to drastically reduce fossil fuels. We have to address wealth inequality. And part of the way you do that is start calling it out. That's one of the things I'm consistently trying to do on LinkedIn. It's one of the things I did within the drowning prevention field, is find things and start calling them out. So I start distraction hashtag marketing or distraction marketing. Like, tell people you're being manipulated. Did you know you're being manipulated? This is what they're trying to do. And this is how they're benefiting it. So I think it's a pincher move at both sides. And I think I said at the very beginning when I logged on, art is the ultimate form of activism, and it has to be one of the powerful tools. And again, this is my age, this is my academic experience, this is my consulting background coming up. I came of age of that era, but I understand how big companies work. And sometimes you have to be inside it and understand it in order to destroy it. You know, so you have to understand the principles that they're using and then flip them against them like a jujitsu move.
In this Caring is Cool, everything started with bringing the creatives to the discussion about creatives impacting change and having approaches through theater, music, poetry, etc. And I'm curious to hear your definition of art, because I think it's actually not an easy task to define.
I see creativity in so many different places. And I think that it is a part of an activist act in allowing people's individual creativity to show in different ways and not to denigrate it. So for instance, quilting is a women's thing that people do. But, you know, some fabric thing in a museum done by a man, you know, showing my bias here, is art. It's big art. Well, quilting is also art. It is a form of expression. You know, my form of expression is actually through fabric. It's through gardening. It's through cooking. And I am not an artist. Mm-hmm. Nothing I have ever produced is ever going to appear in anything related to a museum under any circumstances. But I create, I write. Words are my canvas much of the time, the writing. And so that finding that, I walked with a friend this morning. She teaches art at the Art Institute of Chicago, and her specialty is the intersection between technology and art. Mm-hmm. How do you create art out of that? And so I'm going to pass it off to the People's Collective, but I think that's part of it, is understanding that what art is allowing individual expression. Going back to what Merlin was saying, how do we take that individual expression and use it to collaboration to create the bigger voice? You know, one of the things I think that art is really successful, I'm sure all of you have seen, like Instagram or wherever, you know, like, here's the best signs were at the protest march. Those signs are usually pretty awesome. I mean, there's some that are kind of lame, you know, save the planet. We're all trying to do that. But there's some you're like, oh, wow, you like really thought about that one. So I feel like I've kind of cheated a little bit in that I think that art is everywhere, but art is, I see Jeff put something, it's trigger. I'm just seeing the word trigger. Art is something that triggers emotions.
My offering to what you're naming is related to that I think about it as disarming people, when beauty and joy disarms us into understanding new ways of being in the world. And so in my practice, I think of myself as a social practice artist. Literally, one of the things that I did when I was the artist in residence for the Civic Engagement Commission was take a bus from Rikers Island from a prison, and we understood during the pandemic that we had to meet residents where they are. And the idea was, how do we turn a bus from a prison into a community center made of 8.8 million beads, recycled beads? And in doing so, use a punitive justice tool to create a transformative justice future. And so much of the, like what I engage with is inviting folks to imagine the future that we can only inhabit together in a healthy way. And one of the things that I want to remind us all is that we spend so many of our resources, 95% of our resources are spent on resolving the challenges we're dealing with, instead of practicing the visioning of the future that's to come, that takes care of all people. And so when I think about art, I think about it as a noun, as a verb, not a noun, which is to say it is an action. We create, we do together, we collaborate on whatever expression we're deeply engaged with. And that moves us towards an understanding that anything is possible. So usually when I'm invited into community, we're in a circle and I say, what impossible things can we do together here that we cannot do alone? And the more impossible an idea, the more I'm interested in going after it, because in that process, we find out how to fundraise, we find out how to tell stories, and we find out how to be fully embodied in relationship to one another, so that the art projects become excuses for us to get to know one another. And so another clear example is a project called Coloring Faith, where we painted 18 houses of worship yellow in the name of love from Nairobi to Mombasa in Kenya. And in that project, we had Muslims, Christians, and Hindus, and all kinds of folks showing up to paint buildings yellow. But what was happening was that they were talking about what they do on Sundays and what their favorite food is and what their families like to do when they have free time on vacation. And so literally it's ways of getting folks to meet each other and to create meaning together. And for me, a huge part of that is that creative exercise. I'm always saying, where are the gyms for the for the brain, for human creativity and imagination, and not just for our bodies, right? We have gyms for the body all over the world, all over every city, places where people go to work out and get muscles. How do we practice imagining, and how do we exercise creativity in a way that's collective and intentional?
This is the excellent transition to the breakout room, so we can exactly do this exercise shortly. So let's meet there for 5 minutes and then come back to the main stage.
Yeah, so what were your perceptions from the first part of it? I mean, we covered a lot of ground. Oh, and people's creative, tell me your real first name.
Yasmani.
Yasmani.
I always say it's like Armani, but with a yes at the beginning. Yasmani.
Yes, all right, Yasmani. Got it.
Right.
So I was just asking, what were people's perception? Because we covered kind of a lot of ground with the collaboration and the fear and the art and stuff. Like, what kind of bubbles to the top for people?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a little bit too many topics at the same time. So for me, it's a bit difficult to focus what is the message. But I mean, if we talk about collaboration, yeah, I mean, that's really a big word I mean, and also if you want to tackle challenges like climate change or the challenges of the Anthropocene, I think collaboration becomes a small word again. So I mean, I'm thinking of Donna Haraway. I don't know if you know the philosopher Donna Haraway, who is proposing like interspecial collaboration. So we haven't talked about that today. So maybe that would be interesting to think of the questions, our ecological interdependence with other species, and to focus on how we can somehow integrate ourselves as a human species in the ecology. And so that would be another form of collaboration we didn't talk about today.
Excellent.
I mean, also if you were working about drowning and water, I mean, we are also dependent on, for example, on the reefs. I don't know if they also play a role in protecting our coastlines, I think. So again there.
Yeah. So it's the ecological coordination as well.
I know that we have at least two, maybe more architects or two urbanists and architects here. Alcides is coming from architecture, and Pete as well, and Saba is an urban designer. And
I'm actually trained as an architect too.
You as well. Oh.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. So I guess like architecture and art, there are also a lot of relations and you mentioned just painting houses in yellow in a way. It's like some artificial surface design that you add, which may have a lot of impression. So I guess this discussion about what is art to you, or the act of art, I found it very interesting. And also one other thing which you mentioned, Rebecca, that your friend works in this technology and art intersection, and I'm actually coming more from the research and technology side, and we have had several artists working with us, and we actually are confronted with kind of the opposite thinking of what the general public thinks about scientists or artists. So the scientist, in my view, has to be extremely creative to make new discoveries, and the artist often needs to have extreme precision, repetition, and technical know-how to realize an artwork that is very intricate and very difficult to do. But it's kind of over-marketed in one direction or the other. So often...
Well, if we talk about art or science, then we are talking about an elite of people who can sort of be creators in the sense where others will be consumers. So my point was on the autonomy of the capacity for of all the people to be scientists and artists as well. So let's go in the direction of what Yasmani was talking about, I guess. So to collaborate, yes, okay, it's important where you build together autonomy, and then you go to look for inspiration, for techniques, for art, to be free, to create autonomy. So this is where we have to build, in my perspective, like specifically system change relating to climate crisis, is that we do not have to address climate. We do not have to address specifically capitalism. We have to address this system of power where we are powerless, and then how we build from nothing. That when I was talking about, okay, how do we use this social marketing, like to build this will for autonomy, something. So, okay, how will we ourselves solve our problems here? And then this is how we are going to solve all the problems of the planet. So if we cannot solve our problems here in our building, how can we solve the problems of we are dependent of someone who is going to do this, a scientist or an artist, or okay. So this is a point of autonomy for me is very important.
I see this. I feel like there's two things that come up for me in what you're naming, and the words that popped up for me were the word elite and the word power. And the reason that these are critical in my perspective is because a huge part of what we have to do in terms of the social transformation that has to occur for us to have a healthy future is an understanding that there is no garbage, right? We're we're in one earth, right? Everything here is valuable in some way or another. And to think about things as disposable, including human beings, it's a critical aspect of, because I feel like in America specifically, we have so much class resentment of like the elites who went to like university and have their jargon and their language, and then the rest of us. And I have family and friends who live in different parts of the country who I feel this energy from. And I just think, gosh, if we understood that the artist and the architect is in service to a larger goal, as are all of us, and if we understood that there's value in each person and can communicate that clearly, as opposed to holding on to power or isolating different elements. Because I think when I think about collaboration, I think so much of What's challenging about it now is that we become so siloed within government, within institutions across. I don't know, like when I think about any kind of makeup of a society, literally there's so many silos, and a huge part of the work that I'm trying to do within the systems that I'm a part of is really to integrate and find ways for us to do this work collectively, so that we're not saying climate is an issue over here and not in social justice. Social justice cannot be undone without climate change being undone, in terms of how we think about the cross-sectionality of all the different things we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, like I thought that I found what Rebecca said really interesting, like about fear, that yeah, it tends to like put you in the situation of total fear and having either like this panic or like have the feeling that you cannot do anything and just be passive about the things. And maybe like to connect it with what Jana said, like what is art and so on. I think like in that matter, yeah, maybe for me, like I am a person who just tend to like see things black and white, and like maybe just to fall into that trap. And like yeah, I found art yeah, like a tool, like somehow like something that translates like this fear to something that through that you can just see another perspective and like deal with the things that either you couldn't deal with. And also like I think there is also connection in that matter with science. This science is also like somehow give you the power to cope with things that you like makes you like this overwhelming fear, and gives you power to like understand things.
Also gives you back autonomy to go back to, I mean, creating art also lives you up to the state of autonomy, because nobody can take this from you, because you are a being and you are the one who is creating this thing, whether it is a poem or a gardening project or putting a flower into a seed into the earth. It's all creative somehow, and this I would see this as a tool to celebrate one's autonomy also,
or agency.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me take a shot at synthesizing what I've heard throughout the main session coming off of it and right now. Yasmini, it was you who said that like 95% of our focus has been on the present and only 5% on the future. And that really struck me, because I think that sums up the weakness of activists, in that corporations spend a whole lot more than 5% of their time thinking of what their future is going to be. And that's their strength. They have a very clear vision of their future. And so looking at that, the need to switch from the fear-based bombardment of stuff that is being done to us, that distraction marketing, that hidden marketing that Merlin referred to using art as an aid to collaboration across a number of different fields, not just artists, but scientists, people of a lot of different discipline, to start pulling their ideas out to envision a different future, and then turning around and beginning to give people the autonomy to give them the skills to start going towards that future. So this idea of shifting our reaction from reacting to the current situation, the present, to envisioning a future by granting autonomy, pulling the creativity from all the different ideas, and coming up with basically a strategic plan, with an implementation plan, with spreadsheets, with spreadsheets, I hope, and like financial analysis, but then using that art, that autonomy, to start asking people to not just react to the current situation, to build a different future. We can't do anything unless we know where we're going to. We can't do anything as transformative. Did I more or less capture it, or did I get something wrong?
Very good.
Okay. All right. I guess we leave our breakout rooms. I'll see you back in the main room.
See you back in the main stage. Yeah. Merlin, if you could please summarize what happened in your breakout room. And yeah, sorry if some have to leave. Bye. Thanks for joining so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Collective consciousness right now is becoming aware of something that has probably been going on all along, and we're sitting with a certain sense of overwhelm. Like, I personally try to always find the positive side again, but I can't help but notice and like report honestly that what I'm noticing within myself, especially considering the last few weeks' events, and just how the world seems to work right now. And we're connected via platforms that are connecting bright people, but that are limited in their output. A lot can grow from there, but it's still a little bit like, I feel like what's lacking is a unified story, and also clarity on what can we actually do. Like the atmosphere before here a little bit, and also in the breakout room, was one of, all right, we're sitting with a lot of problems. They're wicked, they're interconnected, they share context, but they're all over the place. I recently heard a notion by Nora Bateson that the nicely separated sustainable development goals boxed in, they're all separate from each other, and if we tackle one, we do it at the cost of everything else. And I guess I like that the feeling that comes up within me is that we're all sitting together with a sense of, wow, this is a lot. Some probably have confidence that we'll find a way. I do. I see it not as a given, not as a we can relax, this will be figured out, like the waiting for the golden age, but really sitting with it, feeling through it, and hopefully coming up with punchy new narratives that can unite us under a unifying story that's resonant, and it's not made up by some social engineer, but by the collective itself. And that's a challenge, obviously. So I would allow to sit us with this for now, if that's present.
Thank you very much. And yeah, someone from that breakout room would like to add something?
I mean, we just were at the end talking about feeling censorship in the media platforms. We're in these weird worlds where we're forced to use these tools, and the tools really seem to function differently based on what you pay, what you do, what you say. And it's, of course, there's actually private companies essentially regulating speech. We talked a bit about conspiracy versus like, oh, so there's reality, which is maybe worse than a lot of conspiracies. There was an article I recall, there was a scientific study done in Germany where they just did tests on TikTok, and they found that, yes, if you post stuff about degrowth or stuff about climate and planet, you literally just weren't getting the same visibility. They were systematically pushing it down so that you wouldn't be shown to as many people just because they could. Yeah, we have a bunch of companies essentially controlling a lot of things that are actually, that we treat them as, oh, these should be impartial platforms where I can compete with everyone equally, and we're not actually being treated equally. We have to do more than just use the platform as maybe the platform tells us to, but try to understand what they're actually doing. And maybe one can motivate a system that tries to force the platforms to be somehow more balanced. But I don't know.
Yes, Karen. Yes, please. Go ahead.
One additional thing. I think that was very well put there, Jeff, actually. Excellent. Thank you. So another thought I had was just to align with Merlin's idea that, you know, psychology is going to figure in how we move forward and how we adjust our collective attitude towards what we're doing to the planet. I don't think humanity is going to enter its better future self until we fix the malaise of our minds, and there are many. And so I just named a couple: overconsumption, the toxic masculine construct under which so much destruction happens, and I like to think that love will one day become some kind of currency in the world, that it will be valued and make things better somehow.
yeah, then I would like to ask Rebecca to summarize what happened on our room.
Thank you. We had a great discussion, picked up on, in part, the complexity of everything we're talking about and all the moving parts. And I think that all gets tied into part of what we're discussing, but some overlap, this idea of the need for a unified story, the clarity, and just this mention just now of the competition, the knowledge of the competition that Jeff and Karen brought in. So one of the things we went back to was Yasmani's view that, we're spending 95% of our focus on essentially reacting. And I will say that by the reacting, it's when we are being marketed, we are being manipulated. And that is, as we talked about a lot, in fear. And so we spend so much of our focus on reacting and trying to maintain the status quo, whereas the competition is 5%. Corporations do not spend only 5% of their time on their strategy, on their future goal. They spend a significant amount of time on that strategic goal, and then how do we get there? And so the idea of using art to start collaborating and defining art in a much wider thing. How are we bringing artists and scientists and researchers and journalists and doctors and activists from all different fields together in a creative mindset, an art sort of mindset, to start envisioning that different future? So instead of just reacting to what we have right now and the current situation on Earth, what do we want the world to look like? And then how do we build an implementation plan? So it's the switching the mindset, using art, using the autonomy, using, those words that we were using, which are so powerful: art, autonomy, the individual, in, the future. How do we do that? By pulling together the collaboration and getting them focused on thinking of what do we want the world to look like, not how do we battle what we currently have.
I was saying in our group that I'm feeling a little fatigued with all of the troubles in the world at the moment. But what you've just said has really energized me, and I'm so excited by it, because everything you've just said there, in one of my recent episodes of The Circularists, I can't remember which one it was, but I was describing how I see the job in hand now as like a Renaissance 2.0. So when you look back to medieval Italy, where you had the doctors and the scientists and the artists and the sculptors and the iron workers, all in the town square doing new stuff and exchanging disciplines. And so I really feel everything that you've just said, that this is the age of the Da Vinci-esques. Yes. And you need to just meld together and do something very new and build tomorrow, is what I feel. So I'd just like to give you a fist bump and say thank you. You just brightened my day.
Well, thank you, right back at you. And you're not the only one feeling completely overwhelmed. I mean, I know I am. There are days I look at my news feed and I'm like, oh my God, hold the cover over my heads. But I have to say, following what you just said, that Renaissance was a period of the world is not working. What world do we want? And what we are experiencing is everything we've been talking about, which is this the distraction marketing, the oppression of keep people down, keep the barrage of the bad news. Like Jeff said, we're not getting, it's being edited out. The hope is being edited out. So how do we reclaim that?
Right.
But again, I think it's the understanding of this is being done to us. Why? It's being done so that we don't create the Renaissance.
Right. The system will protect the system. That's its job, to keep the status quo, And what Merlin was talking about in terms of using psychology as an access point, and you're saying use art, that's a way to bypass all of this indoctrination, get to the limbic brain and the heart of people. And that's where reactions happen. I'm very excited.
Yeah, we need to close, and actually it's I would like to announce something that relates to Karen, and to Karen being not only an engaged speaker but an excellent facilitator. And we decided, we invited Karen to moderate the next Caring a School event, which will happen in November. And Karen will be the one that will be moderating that session. And we're very excited about that collaboration with the Circularists. And as you might know, the Circularists, it's a series of interviews that Karen is doing with change makers. We're looking forward to that. Thank you everyone for joining, for your active contributions today. It was lovely to see some of you again and some of you for the first time. I hope you join the next time. And thanks so much, Karen, for accepting to moderate the next one. I'm really excited to be participant rather than moderator on this next session. And thanks so much, Rebecca, for accepting to be a panelist, as well as Merlin. Stay tuned and follow New Media Network for the announcement for the next event. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.